Stop waiting to feel ready. You never will. Why action comes before confidence, courage, and success. Chapter 1. The Readiness Illusion. There is a dangerous sentence that quietly destroys more dreams than failure ever could. A sentence repeated in countless forms. I'll start next month. I need more preparation. I need to learn a little more first. I need more confidence. I just don't feel ready yet. At first glance, these statements seem reasonable, responsible, even. After all, preparation is important. Learning is valuable. Planning matters. But hidden inside these statements is a trap. A trap that keeps millions of people stuck for years. The belief that readiness comes before action. It doesn't. And understanding this may change your life. The dream that never begins. Imagine two people. Both have the same dream. The first decides to start immediately. Not perfectly. Not confidently. Not with complete knowledge. Just starts. The second decides to wait until they feel fully prepared. A year passes. Then another. Then another. The first person makes mistakes. Learns. Improves. Adapts. Builds experience. Builds confidence. Builds momentum. The second person continues preparing. Researching. Planning. Thinking. Waiting. Still hoping readiness will arrive. Eventually, the gap becomes enormous. Not because one person was more talented. Because one person moved while the other waited. Why readiness feels necessary. The human brain loves certainty. Certainty creates safety. Safety creates comfort. Comfort reduces anxiety. Readiness appears to offer certainty. If you feel ready, you believe success becomes more likely. Failure becomes less likely. Risk becomes smaller. The problem is that most meaningful opportunities contain uncertainty no matter how prepared you are. Starting a business. Writing a book. Launching a YouTube channel. Changing careers. Building relationships. Leading teams. Speaking publicly. No amount of preparation eliminates uncertainty. Eventually, action becomes necessary. The first time effect. Think about the first time you drove a car. The first presentation you gave. The first interview you attended. The first job you worked. The first major decision you made. Did you feel completely ready? Probably not. Most people don't. The first time is always uncomfortable. Because readiness is often impossible before experience exists. And experience only arrives after action. This creates a paradox. You need experience to feel ready. But you need action to gain experience. The only way through the paradox is movement. The confidence myth. One of the biggest misconceptions in personal development is that confidence comes first. People imagine successful individuals wake up feeling fearless. Prepared. Certain. Ready. Reality is very different. Confidence is usually the result of action, not the cause of it. The athlete becomes confident through training. The entrepreneur becomes confident through experience. The speaker becomes confident through repetition. The creator becomes confident through publishing. Action creates evidence. Evidence creates confidence. Confidence rarely appears beforehand. The danger of endless preparation. Preparation is useful until it becomes avoidance. Many people hide inside preparation. They buy courses, read books, watch videos, make plans, create strategies, take notes, research endlessly, yet never begin. The activity feels productive, but progress never occurs. The person becomes trapped in a cycle of learning without doing. Knowledge accumulates. Experience does not. Growth remains theoretical. The dream remains distant. Why fear loves waiting? Fear understands something important. If it can delay action, it can maintain control. Fear rarely says, "Never do it. That would be obvious." Instead, fear says, "Do it later. Prepare a little more. Wait for better conditions. Start next year." The delay feels reasonable. The danger feels avoided. The dream remains alive, But nothing changes. Fear wins through postponement, not prohibition. The illusion of future courage. Many people assume their future self will be braver, more disciplined, more motivated, more prepared. Yet future versions of ourselves often behave exactly like present versions. Because habits continue. Patterns continue. Thinking continues. Waiting today usually creates more waiting tomorrow. Action today creates more action tomorrow. The future is heavily influenced by what you practice now. Life rewards movement. The world responds differently to action than intention. People often celebrate intentions internally. I plan to start a business. I want to write a book. I'm going to get in shape. Intentions feel good. But life rewards execution. Results emerge from movement, not plans alone. Not dreams alone. Not goals alone. Movement. The individuals who change their lives are rarely the ones with the best intentions. They are the ones who act. The real meaning of readiness. Most people define readiness incorrectly. They think readiness means no fear, no doubt, no uncertainty, no risk. But those conditions rarely exist. A better definition is this: readiness is the willingness to begin despite fear, the willingness to move despite uncertainty, the willingness to learn while doing, the willingness to grow publicly, the willingness to be imperfect. This form of readiness is available immediately. The cost of waiting. Every year spent waiting carries a price. Skills not developed. Relationships not built. Opportunities not taken. Experience not gained. Potential not realized. The tragedy is not failure. Failure teaches. The tragedy is inactivity. Because inactivity teaches nothing, the person remains exactly where they started. The first step changes everything. Every remarkable achievement begins with an unimpressive first step. A first page. A first workout. A first video. A first conversation. A first attempt. A first risk. The step often feels small, but its impact is enormous. Because action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates larger action, and the cycle begins. The decision. At some point, everyone faces a choice. Continue waiting, or begin. Continue preparing forever, or accept uncertainty. Continue seeking readiness, or create it through action. That decision separates dreamers from doers. Not permanently. Anyone can change sides, at any moment. With one action, one step, one decision, a question that matters. Imagine yourself 10 years from now. Looking back. Which regret would hurt more? Trying and failing, or never trying at all? For most people, the answer is obvious. Yet their behavior often suggests otherwise. Because fear focuses attention on immediate discomfort. Wisdom focuses attention on long-term consequences. And long-term consequences are where life is truly shaped. The journey begins. This book is not about becoming fearless. It is about becoming active. Not about eliminating uncertainty. About moving through it. Not about waiting for confidence. About building confidence through action. Because the truth is simple. You are not supposed to feel ready. Nobody ever truly does. The people who change their lives simply stop waiting. And that is where our journey begins. Chapter 2. Your brain is designed to avoid risk. If you have ever wondered why it is so difficult to begin something important, the answer is not a lack of ambition. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is not a lack of potential. The answer is much older, much deeper, and much more powerful. The answer is survival. Long before human beings built cities, launched businesses, wrote books, or created technology, they faced a very different challenge. Staying alive. For most of human history, survival was uncertain. Danger existed everywhere. Food was limited. Predators were common. Resources were scarce. A single mistake could carry serious consequences. In that environment, caution was valuable. Risk could be costly. And because caution improved survival, evolution rewarded brains that paid attention to danger. Those brains became our brains. The problem is that the modern world has changed dramatically. But much of the brain has not. The ancient brain in a modern world. Imagine taking a hunter from 10,000 years ago and placing him in today's world. The environment would seem completely unfamiliar. Technology. Airplanes, smartphones, the internet, modern cities, everything would be new. Yet one thing would remain surprisingly familiar. Human emotions. Fear. Anxiety. Uncertainty. The brain's warning systems still operate in much the same way they always have. The difference is that today's threats are often psychological rather than physical. Public speaking. Starting a business. Changing careers. Creating content. Asking someone out. Launching a project. These situations are rarely dangerous. But the brain often reacts as if they are. Why risk feels bigger than it is? The brain has a negativity bias. This means it naturally pays more attention to possible problems than possible rewards. Thousands of years ago, this bias was useful. Missing a danger could be fatal. Missing an opportunity was usually less serious. As a result, the brain evolved to notice threats quickly. Even small threats. Even unlikely threats. Even imagined threats. Today, that same system operates constantly. You think about starting a business. The brain imagines failure. You consider speaking in public. The brain imagines embarrassment. You think about changing your life. The brain imagines everything that could go wrong. The result is hesitation. Not because disaster is likely. Because the brain is doing what it evolved to do. The safety trap. The brain loves safety. Safety feels comfortable, predictable, manageable, controllable. But there is a hidden problem. Most meaningful opportunities exist outside complete safety. Growth contains uncertainty. Opportunity contains risk. Success contains vulnerability. The very experiences that improve life often require stepping beyond what feels safe. This creates a conflict. Your future wants expansion. Your brain wants protection. And until you understand this conflict, hesitation will continue feeling mysterious. The brain's favorite question. Every time you consider doing something important, your brain asks a question: what if it goes wrong? At first, this seems logical, responsible, even. The problem is that the question is incomplete. Because there is another question the brain often ignores: what if it goes right? Fear focuses attention on loss. Growth focuses attention on possibility. Both matter. But most people spend far more time analyzing risks than rewards. The result is imbalance. Potential opportunities appear more dangerous than they actually are. Why action feels unnatural? Many people believe confident individuals naturally enjoy taking risks. In reality, action often feels unnatural for everyone. The brain interprets unfamiliar experiences cautiously. This means beginning something new often triggers discomfort. Not because the action is wrong. Because it is unfamiliar. The first workout feels awkward. The first video feels uncomfortable. The first speech feels frightening. The first business attempt feels uncertain. The discomfort is not evidence of inability. It is evidence of novelty. And novelty always attracts attention from the brain. The cost of playing it safe feels intelligent. Until you examine the long-term consequences. The person avoids applying for the opportunity. Avoids starting the project. Avoids sharing the idea. Avoids pursuing the dream. In the short term, they experience relief. No rejection. No embarrassment. No failure. The brain celebrates. But over time, something else appears. Regret. Curiosity. Frustration. Questions. What would have happened if I had tried? This is one of the great paradoxes of life. The safest decision in the short term is often the riskiest decision in the long term. The illusion of control. Waiting often creates an illusion of control. The person believes, Once I know more, I'll feel safer. Once conditions improve, I'll begin. Once everything is ready, I'll act. But life rarely provides complete certainty. Every important decision contains unknowns. Every meaningful opportunity contains risk. The desire for complete control often becomes an excuse for inaction. The person waits for certainty that never arrives. Years pass. Nothing changes. Why successful people act anyway? Successful people are not immune to fear. They are not immune to uncertainty. They are not immune to self-doubt. The difference lies in interpretation. They understand that fear is a natural response to growth, not a command to stop. When fear appears, they do not automatically retreat. They evaluate, adjust, then continue. They have learned something most people never fully realize. Action is often safer than endless waiting. Because action creates learning. Learning creates competence. Competence creates confidence. And confidence creates opportunity. The risk of staying the same. Most discussions about risk focus on change. What if the business fails? What if the relationship ends? What if the project doesn't work? Rarely do people ask, what if I never change? What if I stay exactly where I am? What if 5 years pass and nothing improves? These questions reveal a powerful truth. Remaining the same carries risks too. Often enormous ones. Lost opportunities, unfulfilled potential, missed experiences, unrealized dreams. The risk of stagnation is real. It is simply less visible. The courage equation. Courage is often misunderstood. People imagine courage means feeling fearless. It doesn't. Courage means acting while fear is present. The brave person feels uncertainty, then acts. The brave person feels doubt, then acts. The brave person feels anxiety, then acts. Fear and courage are not opposites. They often exist together. The people who accomplish extraordinary things are not free from fear. They are skilled at moving with it. Building risk tolerance. Just as muscles strengthen through exercise, courage strengthens through exposure. Small risks lead to larger risks. Small actions build larger confidence. A difficult conversation. A public post. A new project. A calculated decision. Each experience teaches the brain something important. I survived. Over time, the brain updates its expectations. What once felt dangerous becomes manageable. What once felt impossible becomes normal. This is how transformation occurs. Not through giant leaps. Through repeated exposure to uncertainty. The truth about readiness. Most people assume readiness arrives before action. The truth is usually the opposite. Readiness develops through action. Every step provides information. Every attempt builds capability. Every challenge expands confidence. The person who waits for readiness stays stuck. The person who acts becomes ready. The real enemy. The biggest obstacle is rarely fear itself. The real obstacle is obedience to fear. Fear will always appear. The question is whether it gets to make decisions. Most people allow fear to choose their direction. Extraordinary people listen to fear but choose for themselves. That distinction changes everything. The next discovery. Now that you understand why the brain avoids risk, another question emerges. If readiness doesn't come first, and confidence doesn't come first, then what does? What creates confidence in the first place? Where does courage actually come from? How do ordinary people become capable of extraordinary action? The answer surprises most people. Because confidence is not something you find. It is something you build. And it is built in a way completely opposite to what most people believe. Chapter 3. Confidence comes after action. If there is one belief that keeps more people stuck than almost any other, it is this: once I feel confident, I'll start. It sounds reasonable. In fact, it sounds wise. After all, confidence seems like the kind of thing that should come before action. Before the speech. Before the business. Before the difficult conversation. before the new career, before the big opportunity. But reality works very differently. Confidence is not the cause of action. Confidence is usually the result of action. And misunderstanding this simple truth causes millions of people to spend years waiting for a feeling that can only be earned through experience. The confidence paradox. Imagine someone who has never entered a gym. Do you think they feel confident lifting weights? Probably not. Now imagine that same person training consistently for 2 years. Learning, practicing, improving, getting stronger. How do they feel now? More confident. What changed? Not their thoughts, their experience. The same principle applies everywhere. Public speaking, writing, leadership, relationships, business. Confidence is rarely created through thinking. It is created through evidence. And evidence comes from action. This creates a paradox. You need confidence to act effectively. But you need action to build confidence. The only solution is to act before confidence fully exists. Why the brain wants confidence first? The brain loves guarantees. It wants certainty. Proof. Predictability. Confidence feels like proof. The brain assumes, if I feel confident, success is more likely. The problem is that confidence cannot be manufactured out of thin air. It must be built. And building requires experience. The brain wants the reward before paying the price. Life rarely works that way. The first time problem. Think about the first time you did anything important. The first day at school. The first interview. The first presentation. The first date. The first job. The first major challenge. Were you confident? Probably not. You were uncertain, awkward, nervous, maybe even scared. Yet you did it anyway. And afterward, something changed. The experience became familiar. Familiarity reduced uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty increased confidence. The confidence came after the experience, not before it. Action creates evidence. The human mind forms beliefs based largely on evidence. If you repeatedly take action, the brain begins collecting proof. Proof that you can handle challenges. Proof that you can survive discomfort. Proof that you can adapt. Proof that you can learn. Each action becomes evidence, and evidence slowly transforms self-perception. The person who once thought, I can't do this, eventually begins thinking, maybe I can. Then, I probably can. And finally, I've done it before. Confidence is built one piece of evidence at a time. The problem with positive thinking alone, many people attempt to create confidence through affirmations. Positive thinking, motivational content, inspirational quotes. These tools can help, but they have limits. Because the brain values evidence more than words. You can repeat, I am confident, 1,000 times. But if your actions consistently communicate fear and avoidance, the brain notices the contradiction. Real confidence comes from alignment. Thoughts and actions supporting each other. Words matter. Experience matters more. Why small wins matter. One of the fastest ways to build confidence is through small victories. Most people underestimate the power of small wins. They focus only on major achievements. The promotion, the business success, the huge breakthrough. But confidence grows through accumulation. One completed task. One difficult conversation. One promise kept. One fear faced. One challenge overcome. Each success sends a message. I can do hard things. The brain remembers. And confidence expands. Confidence is specific. Another misconception is that confidence is universal. It isn't. Someone may feel confident in business but insecure in relationships. Confident socially but uncertain professionally. Confident on stage but nervous in private conversations. Confidence is often tied to experience within a specific area. This is good news. Because it means confidence is learnable. You do not need to become confident in everything. You simply need to build evidence where growth matters most. The confidence trap. Ironically, waiting for confidence often destroys confidence. Here's why. Every time you avoid an opportunity because you feel uncertain, the brain learns something. It learns. Avoidance keeps me safe. The avoidance creates relief. Relief feels rewarding. The brain repeats the behavior. The comfort zone grows stronger. Confidence grows weaker. This cycle continues until avoidance becomes automatic. The person mistakes comfort for safety. And safety for progress. Nothing changes. Why successful people seem confident? When people observe successful individuals, they often see confidence. What they do not see are the years that created it. The failed attempts. The mistakes. The awkward beginnings. The uncertainty. The practice. The repetition. The discomfort. Confidence is often the visible result of invisible effort. The audience sees the finished product, not the long process behind it. This creates a dangerous illusion. People compare their beginning to someone else's middle, and conclude they are not ready. Competence creates confidence. One of the strongest sources of confidence is competence. When you become skilled at something, belief naturally increases. The speaker trusts their ability because they have spoken many times. The writer trusts their ability because they have written many times. The athlete trusts their ability because they have trained many times. Competence creates certainty. Certainty creates confidence. The path is straightforward. Practice. Experience. Improvement. Confidence follows. The courage before confidence rule. There is a principle that appears repeatedly in successful lives. Courage comes before confidence. Not after. Before. The person acts while uncertain. Acts while nervous. Acts while imperfect. Acts while unprepared. Then confidence grows from the experience. Most people reverse the sequence. They wait for confidence first, which means they never gain the experience needed to create it. The self-trust factor. At its deepest level, confidence is not belief that everything will go perfectly. It is belief that you can handle what happens. This distinction is powerful. Confident people do not expect life to be easy. They expect themselves to be adaptable, resilient, capable, resourceful. They trust their ability to respond, not their ability to predict every outcome. This form of confidence is much stronger because it survives uncertainty. Confidence through repetition. The brain learns through repetition. Every courageous action updates its expectations. Every completed challenge changes its predictions. What once felt terrifying becomes manageable. What once felt impossible becomes normal. This is why consistency matters. One brave action helps. Repeated brave actions transform identity. The person begins seeing themselves differently. Not as someone who waits, but as someone who acts. The moment everything changes. There is a moment in every transformation when a person stops asking, "Do I feel confident enough?" and starts asking, "Am I willing to begin?" That shift changes everything. Because willingness is available now, confidence is earned later. The moment you stop waiting for confidence and start creating it, momentum begins. And momentum is far more valuable than motivation. The next challenge. Now you understand where confidence comes from. Not thinking. Not wishing. Not waiting. Action. But another question remains. If confidence comes after action, why do so many people continue delaying? Why do they keep postponing important decisions? Why do they keep saying, "I'll do it later"? The answer is deeper than laziness. Deeper than procrastination. Because every day spent waiting carries a cost. A cost most people never calculate. And that hidden cost may be far greater than you realize. Chapter 4. The hidden cost of waiting. Most people think waiting is harmless. After all, what damage can come from a delay? A few days. A few weeks. A few months. Maybe even a few years. The opportunity will still be there later. The dream can wait. The goal can wait. The conversation can wait. The decision can wait. At least that is what people tell themselves. But life operates according to a rule many people fail to understand: waiting is not neutral. Every day you postpone action, something is happening. Time is moving. Opportunities are changing. Skills are aging. Competitors are advancing. Life is continuing. Even while you stand still. The greatest danger of waiting is that its costs are often invisible. You do not feel them immediately. You discover them later. Sometimes much later. The lie of someday. There is a word that has quietly destroyed countless dreams. That word is someday. Someday I'll write the book. Someday I'll start the business. Someday I'll get in shape. Someday I'll travel. Someday I'll learn the skill. Someday I'll pursue my passion. Someday feels comforting. It keeps the dream alive. It allows the person to believe they have not abandoned the goal. But someday is dangerous because it has no deadline, no urgency, no accountability. And without those things, someday often becomes never. Years pass. The dream remains exactly where it started, inside the imagination. Time is not standing still. One of the biggest misconceptions about waiting is the assumption that circumstances remain unchanged. They don't. Markets change. Technology changes. Relationships change. Industries change. People change. You change. Every year spent waiting alters the environment. Sometimes opportunities disappear entirely. The perfect moment people are waiting for often never arrives because reality continues evolving. The person who acts early gains experience. The person who waits gains uncertainty. The skill gap. Imagine two people deciding whether to learn a new skill. One begins today. The other waits until next year. When the second person finally starts, what happens? The first person already has a year's worth of experience. A year's worth of mistakes. A year's worth of growth. A year's worth of confidence. The gap is significant, and it continues growing. This is one of the hidden costs of waiting. Not just lost time. Lost development. Skills compound. Experience compounds. Knowledge compounds. The earlier growth begins, the larger the advantage becomes. The confidence cost. Most people think waiting preserves confidence. In reality, it often damages it. Every postponed action sends a message to the brain. The message says, maybe I can't handle this. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe this is too difficult. The brain listens. And over time, hesitation becomes evidence. Evidence of self-doubt. The longer someone delays, the more intimidating the action often becomes. The challenge grows larger in imagination. Confidence shrinks. What could have been a small step becomes a mountain. Opportunities have expiration dates. Not every opportunity lasts forever. Some opportunities are temporary. A market trend. A business idea. A career opening. A chance meeting. A relationship. A unique moment in time. People often assume opportunities will remain available indefinitely. Many do not. The tragedy is that missed opportunities rarely announce their departure. They simply disappear. Quietly. Permanently. And often without warning. The regret principle. Psychologists have spent decades studying regret. Their findings reveal something fascinating. As people grow older, they often regret inaction more than action. Not the risks they took. The risks they avoided. Not the mistakes they made. The opportunities they ignored. Why? Because failure usually provides closure. You learn. Adapt. Move forward. But inaction creates uncertainty. The question remains forever. What if? What if I had tried? What if I had started? What if I had believed in myself? What if I had taken the chance? Those questions can follow people for decades. Waiting creates more waiting. One of the least understood aspects of procrastination is its tendency to reinforce itself. Waiting becomes a habit. The person delays one decision, then another, then another. Eventually, hesitation becomes automatic. The brain learns a pattern. Think. Analyze. Delay. Repeat. The behavior strengthens with repetition. Soon, even small decisions feel difficult. Action becomes increasingly rare. The individual begins identifying as someone who never quite gets started. The compound effect of delay. Most people understand compound interest financially. Few understand it psychologically. Small delays accumulate. 1 week becomes 1 month. 1 month becomes 1 year. 1 year becomes a decade. The impact is enormous. A business not started, a skill not learned, a relationship not pursued, a dream not developed. The consequences compound invisibly, until one day they become impossible to ignore. Life rewards action takers. The world often appears unfair. And sometimes it is. But one pattern appears repeatedly. Life tends to reward movement. The person who tries gains experience. The person who acts gains feedback. The person who experiments gains knowledge. The person who starts gains momentum. Even unsuccessful attempts provide valuable information. Inaction provides almost none. This is why action takers often progress faster. Not because they avoid mistakes. Because they learn from them sooner. Why perfectionism is expensive. Perfectionism often disguises itself as high standards. But many forms of perfectionism are actually fear. Fear of criticism. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of imperfection. The perfectionist waits for ideal conditions. The ideal plan. The ideal version. The ideal moment. The problem is that perfection does not exist. The result is endless preparation and limited progress. Perfectionism creates delay. Delay creates stagnation. Stagnation creates regret. The opportunity cost of comfort. Every choice carries an opportunity cost. When you choose one path, you automatically reject another. Comfort has opportunity costs. Safety has opportunity costs. Avoidance has opportunity costs. The hours spent scrolling could have been spent learning. The years spent hesitating could have been spent building. The energy spent worrying could have been spent creating. The cost is not always visible. But it is real. Every comfortable choice quietly competes with a possible future. The difference between preparation and avoidance. Preparation is valuable. Avoidance is destructive. The challenge is telling them apart. Preparation has an end point. Avoidance does not. Preparation leads to action. Avoidance delays action. Preparation creates momentum. Avoidance creates excuses. A useful question is, am I preparing to begin, or preparing to avoid beginning? The answer is often revealing. Why action clarifies everything. People frequently wait because they want certainty. But certainty rarely comes through thinking alone. It comes through experience. Action reveals information that planning cannot. Action exposes strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, problems, solutions. The person who acts gains clarity. The person who waits gains speculation. Clarity always wins. The greatest cost of all the costs associated with waiting, one is greater than the rest. It is not money. Not status. Not opportunity. It is potential. The version of yourself that never emerges. The capabilities never developed. The confidence never built. The impact never created. The life never fully lived. Potential is difficult to measure. Which is why people often underestimate its loss. But it may be the most valuable thing they ever possess. A new perspective. The next time you feel tempted to wait, ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking, what might happen if I act? Ask, what might happen if I don't? That question changes everything. Because waiting is not free. It never has been. Every delay carries a price. The only question is whether you notice it now or later. The next discovery. If waiting is so costly, why do intelligent people continue doing it? Why does hesitation feel so reasonable? Why does delay often appear logical? The answer is fascinating. Because fear rarely introduces itself honestly. It rarely says, I'm afraid. Instead, it disguises itself as logic, as caution, as preparation, as responsibility, as perfectionism. And until you recognize these disguises, fear will continue controlling your decisions while pretending to protect you. Chapter 5. Why fear pretends to be logic. Fear has a public relations problem. If fear appeared honestly, most people would recognize it immediately. Imagine hearing a voice in your head say, "Don't start that business because I'm scared. Don't ask for that opportunity because I'm afraid of rejection. Don't share your work because I fear criticism." The truth would be obvious. You would immediately see the emotional nature of the resistance. So fear rarely presents itself that way. Instead, it wears disguises. It dresses itself as intelligence, as responsibility, as realism, as careful planning, as logic. And that is what makes fear so dangerous. Because when fear sounds rational, people obey it, not realizing who is actually speaking. The most convincing liar. Fear is persuasive because it often contains a small amount of truth. Every opportunity contains risks. Every decision contains uncertainty. Every goal contains obstacles. Fear points to these realities, then exaggerates them. The exaggeration is subtle, so subtle that many people never notice. Fear transforms possibilities into probabilities, and probabilities into certainties. A possible problem becomes an inevitable disaster. A potential setback becomes guaranteed failure. The brain stops evaluating objectively. It begins protecting emotionally. When fear sounds intelligent, consider a person who wants to start a YouTube channel. Fear rarely says, "I'm scared people will judge me." Instead it says, "The market is too competitive. I need better equipment first. I should study content creation for another 6 months. There are already too many creators. I'll start after I learn a little more." Each statement sounds reasonable. Some may even contain truth. But together they create paralysis. Years pass. No channel, no videos, no growth, no experience. Fear wins. Not through intimidation, through persuasion. The perfectionism mask. One of fear's favorite disguises is perfectionism. Perfectionism sounds admirable. High standards, attention to detail, commitment to excellence. But often something else is happening. The perfectionist is not pursuing excellence. The perfectionist is avoiding vulnerability. If the work is never finished, it can never be judged. If the project is never launched, it can never fail. If the idea remains private, it can never be criticized. Perfection becomes protection. The person believes they are improving quality. In reality, they are delaying exposure. Why overthinking feels productive? Overthinking is another disguise. People often mistake thinking for progress. Analyzing, researching, comparing options, evaluating possibilities, planning endlessly. These activities feel productive because they involve effort. The mind remains busy. Yet nothing changes externally. Action never occurs. Fear loves overthinking because it creates the illusion of movement without the risk of movement. The person feels engaged, but remains stationary. The safety argument. Fear frequently presents safety as the highest value. Stay where you are. Keep your options open. Don't take unnecessary risks. Wait for better conditions. Again, these suggestions sound wise. Sometimes they are. The problem arises when safety becomes the default response to every opportunity. Because complete safety rarely exists. Every path contains risk. The entrepreneur risks failure. The employee risks stagnation. The creator risks criticism. The non-creator risks regret. The person who changes risks uncertainty. The person who stays the same risks limitation. The question is not whether risk exists. The question is which risk you are willing to accept. The logic of fear versus the logic of growth. Fear and growth often analyze the same situation differently. Fear asks, what if it doesn't work? Growth asks, what if it does? Fear focuses on loss. Growth focuses on possibility. Fear focuses on immediate discomfort. Growth focuses on long-term outcomes. Neither perspective is entirely wrong. But relying exclusively on fear creates imbalance. The person becomes excellent at identifying reasons not to act, and poor at identifying reasons to move forward. Why smart people struggle too. Intelligence does not eliminate fear. In some cases, it strengthens it. Highly intelligent individuals often generate more reasons for hesitation, more scenarios, more possibilities, more analyses, more concerns. Their minds become sophisticated excuse-generating machines. The ability to think deeply becomes the ability to worry deeply. The problem is not intelligence. The problem is directing intelligence toward avoidance instead of action. A brilliant mind can justify almost anything, including inaction. The fear of embarrassment. One of the most powerful fears is social embarrassment. Human beings care deeply about social acceptance. As a result, many decisions are influenced by the possibility of judgment. People imagine criticism, mockery, failure, negative reactions. Most of these scenarios never occur, yet the brain treats them as serious threats. The result is self-censorship. People suppress ideas, hide ambitions, delay goals, remain invisible, all to avoid a moment that may never happen. The evidence problem. Fear often operates without evidence. It predicts outcomes, assumes results, creates stories. Yet these stories are rarely tested. A person believes, nobody will care about my work, but never publishes it. A person believes, I'll fail, but never tries. A person believes, I'm not ready, but never begins. The assumption becomes reality because the experiment never occurs. Fear remains undefeated because it is never challenged. Action exposes fear. One of the fastest ways to weaken fear is through action. Not because action guarantees success. Because action reveals reality. Reality is usually less frightening than imagination. The conversation is easier than expected. The presentation goes better than expected. The project becomes manageable. The challenge becomes solvable. Action replaces speculation with information. And information often reduces fear. The cost of rationalized fear. Fear disguised as logic is especially dangerous because it feels responsible. The person believes they are making intelligent decisions. Meanwhile, years pass. The dream remains untouched. The goal remains distant. The opportunity remains unexplored. The life remains unchanged. The person never realizes fear was involved. They believe they were simply being careful. This is one of fear's greatest victories. Remaining invisible. The question that reveals everything. Whenever you feel resistance, ask yourself, if I knew I could not fail, would I still hesitate? The answer is revealing. If hesitation disappears, fear is likely involved. The obstacle is not logistics, not resources, not timing, fear. Recognizing this creates awareness, and awareness creates freedom. The courage test. Most important decisions eventually reach a point where logic alone cannot decide. The information is sufficient. The preparation is adequate. The opportunity is available. The remaining obstacle is emotional. The person must choose. Move forward, or retreat. This is where courage enters. Not because courage eliminates fear. Because courage acts despite it. The hidden opportunity. Every time fear disguises itself as logic, it presents an opportunity. An opportunity to examine assumptions, question stories, challenge predictions, test beliefs. The person who develops this habit gains a tremendous advantage. They stop automatically believing every fearful thought. They become observers rather than victims of their own minds. And that changes everything. The next step. Now you understand one of fear's greatest tricks. It pretends to be logic. It disguises itself as caution. It convinces people they are being responsible when they are actually being avoidant. But another myth remains. A myth that traps millions of people in hesitation. The belief that somewhere in the future, a perfect moment will arrive. A moment when conditions are ideal. Resources are abundant. Confidence is high, and everything finally aligns. It sounds comforting. It sounds logical, and it is almost entirely false. Chapter 6. The myth of perfect timing. There is a fantasy that lives in the minds of almost everyone. A fantasy so common that most people never question it. It sounds something like this: I'll start when things settle down. I'll begin when I have more money. I'll take action when I have more time. I'll pursue it when life becomes less complicated. I'll move forward when the timing is right. At first glance, these statements sound reasonable, responsible, even wise. After all, timing matters. Preparation matters. Resources matter. Planning matters. But hidden inside these statements is a dangerous assumption. The assumption that somewhere in the future, a perfect moment is waiting. A moment free from uncertainty. Free from obstacles. Free from inconvenience. Free from risk. A moment when everything finally aligns. The problem is simple. That moment does not exist. The imaginary future. The human mind has a fascinating habit. It imagines future versions of life as easier than present versions. Today's problems feel temporary. Tomorrow appears cleaner, more organized, less stressful, more manageable. But reality rarely works this way. New challenges replace old ones. New responsibilities appear. New uncertainties emerge. Life does not pause and create ideal conditions for your dreams. It keeps moving. The future is not empty. It is simply occupied by different obstacles. The history of imperfect beginnings. Look at almost any meaningful achievement. A successful company. A best-selling author. A respected athlete. A thriving creator. A successful entrepreneur. Behind every success story is an imperfect beginning. Limited resources. Limited knowledge. Limited confidence. Limited certainty. People often admire the finished product. They rarely examine the messy start. Yet the start is where the real lesson exists. Successful people did not begin under perfect conditions. They began under available conditions. Why waiting feels smart? Waiting often feels intelligent because it promises improvement. The person believes, a little more preparation will help. A little more knowledge will help. A little more money will help. Sometimes this is true. But there is a point where preparation stops helping and starts delaying. The challenge is recognizing the difference. Fear loves perfect timing because it provides endless justification. There is always another reason to wait. Another condition to improve. Another detail to perfect. Another excuse to postpone. The weather problem. Imagine someone who refuses to leave home until the weather becomes perfect. No wind. No clouds. No rain. No heat. No cold. No discomfort. How often would they leave? Probably very rarely. Life works similarly. Conditions are never fully ideal. Something is always imperfect. Resources. Timing. Knowledge. Confidence. Energy. Circumstances. Waiting for perfection means waiting forever. The cost of delayed momentum. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in achievement. Once movement begins, progress becomes easier. Confidence grows. Skills improve. Opportunities emerge. Relationships form. Experience accumulates. But momentum requires a beginning. And waiting delays that beginning. The person postpones action for 6 months. Then discovers they also postponed 6 months of learning. 6 months of growth. 6 months of feedback. 6 months of opportunity. The hidden cost is not just time. It is lost momentum. Why conditions rarely create success? Many people believe success depends primarily on circumstances. The right economy. The right opportunity. The right location. The right connections. The right resources. These factors matter. But history repeatedly demonstrates something important. People succeed under imperfect conditions all the time, not because circumstances are irrelevant. Because resourcefulness often matters more. The ability to adapt frequently outperforms the desire for ideal conditions. The "one more thing" trap. There is a pattern that appears repeatedly among people who delay action. They always need one more thing. One more course. One more book. One more certification. One more plan. One more month. One more adjustment. The finish line keeps moving. Preparation never ends. Readiness never arrives. The person becomes trapped in a cycle of endless improvement without implementation. Years pass. Potential remains potential. Action creates better timing. Many people think timing determines action. In reality, action often creates timing. Consider networking, business, relationships, career growth, creative projects. Opportunities frequently emerge after movement begins, not before. The person who starts meeting people creates opportunities. The person who starts creating content attracts opportunities. The person who starts building develops opportunities. Waiting often prevents the very circumstances people hope to create. The courage of imperfect action. One of the defining traits of successful individuals is their willingness to act under imperfect conditions. Not recklessly, not carelessly, but imperfectly. They understand something most people resist. Action is always incomplete. Knowledge is always limited. Information is always imperfect. Certainty is always partial. At some point, movement becomes necessary. The person must act despite missing pieces. Why failure teaches faster. Waiting often assumes more thinking will create better decisions. Sometimes it does. But action provides something thinking cannot. Feedback. Reality. Experience. A failed attempt teaches more than endless speculation. The person who tries learns. The person who waits imagines. Learning accelerates growth. Imagining often delays it. This is why action creates progress even when results are imperfect. The myth of readiness revisited. By now, a pattern should be becoming clear. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It is a consequence. Confidence comes after action. Clarity comes after action. Skill comes after action. Momentum comes after action. Opportunities often come after action. The person who waits for these things before beginning usually remains stuck. The person who begins creates them. The window of opportunity. Some opportunities are permanent. Many are not. The longer action is delayed, the greater the chance conditions change. Interests change. Industries change. Technology changes. People change. The individual who moves gains experience while others debate. And experience compounds. By the time the hesitant person finally acts, the action taker has often built an enormous advantage. The most dangerous sentence. Of all the sentences people tell themselves, one may be the most dangerous: now isn't the right time. Sometimes it is true. Most of the time, it is fear disguised as patience. A convenient explanation. A socially acceptable excuse. A delay mechanism. The phrase sounds harmless. But repeated often enough, it can quietly consume decades. The reality of extraordinary lives. When you study people who achieve extraordinary things, one truth appears repeatedly. They did not wait for ideal conditions. They worked with what they had. The resources available, the knowledge available, the opportunities available, the time available. They started before everything was perfect. Because they understood something profound. Perfect conditions are not discovered. They are created through action. The question that changes everything: the next time you feel tempted to wait, ask yourself, what if now is good enough? Not perfect. Not ideal. Good enough. Because good enough creates movement. Movement creates learning. Learning creates growth. Growth creates opportunity. And opportunity creates transformation. The perfect moment rarely changes lives. The decision to begin does. The beginning of courage. The truth is that life rewards motion more than perfection. Not reckless motion. Intentional motion. Progress over paralysis. Action over endless analysis. Movement over waiting. Every extraordinary journey begins before certainty exists. Every meaningful achievement starts under imperfect conditions. Every successful person eventually stops waiting and starts moving. And that is where courage begins. The next discovery. Now you understand that the perfect moment is a myth. Confidence does not come first. Readiness does not come first. Perfect timing does not come first. Action comes first. But how do you actually do it? How do you move when fear remains? When uncertainty remains? When doubt remains? How do ordinary people train themselves to act before they feel ready? That is the practical challenge. And that is exactly where we go next. Chapter 7. Learning to move before you're ready. By now, you understand something that most people spend their entire lives resisting. You will probably never feel completely ready. Not for the big opportunity. Not for the difficult conversation. Not for the new business. Not for the life-changing decision. Not for the dream that matters most. The question is no longer whether readiness arrives. The question is, how do you move without it? Because understanding the problem is only the beginning. Transformation happens when understanding becomes action. This chapter is about building that bridge. The bridge between knowing and doing. Between intention and execution. Between waiting and moving. The first rule. Shrink the fear. One reason people avoid action is that they imagine the entire journey at once. The brain sees the mountain, not the next step. The result is overwhelm. Imagine someone who wants to write a book. Instead of thinking about writing one page, they think about writing 300 pages. The goal becomes intimidating. The brain reacts with avoidance. A better approach is simple. Shrink the challenge. Focus only on the next action, not the entire outcome. The next paragraph, the next workout, the next phone call, the next conversation, the next step. Fear grows when goals feel enormous. Action grows when goals feel manageable. The 2-minute principle. One of the most powerful techniques for overcoming hesitation is reducing the starting requirement. Instead of committing to an hour, commit to 2 minutes. 2 minutes of writing. 2 minutes of exercise. 2 minutes of studying. 2 minutes of planning. Why does this work? Because starting is usually harder than continuing. The brain resists initiation more than effort. Once movement begins, momentum often takes over. The hardest part is not the work. It is crossing the threshold into action. Stop negotiating with yourself. Many people treat action like a debate. Every decision becomes a negotiation. Should I do it now? Maybe later. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe after I feel better. The conversation continues endlessly. Successful people often remove the negotiation. They decide in advance. The workout happens. The writing happens. The practice happens. The action becomes non-negotiable. This eliminates mental friction. Less debating. More doing. Use fear as a signal. Most people interpret fear as a stop sign. But what if fear is actually a direction sign? Think about the experiences that create the most growth. Starting a business. Speaking publicly. Sharing your work. Taking responsibility. Leading others. These actions often trigger fear. Not because they are wrong. Because they matter. Fear frequently points toward important opportunities. Instead of asking, how do I avoid this feeling? Ask, what is this feeling trying to teach me? The answer may reveal your next step. Separate feelings from decisions. One of the biggest mistakes people make is allowing temporary emotions to determine permanent outcomes. You feel uncertain. You postpone. You feel nervous. You avoid. You feel unmotivated. You quit. The problem is that emotions change constantly. If decisions depend entirely on feelings, progress becomes unpredictable. Strong individuals learn a different approach. Feelings are acknowledged. But values make decisions. You may feel nervous and still act. You may feel uncertain and still move. You may feel fear and still continue. This is emotional maturity. Focus on process, not outcome. Fear often becomes overwhelming because attention is fixed on outcomes. Will people like it? Will it succeed? Will I fail? Will it work? The brain becomes trapped in questions it cannot answer. A better strategy is focusing on process. What can you control today? The next action. The next effort. The next improvement. Outcomes belong partly to the future. Actions belong to the present. The present is where power exists. Build evidence daily. Confidence grows from evidence. And evidence grows from action. This means every small action matters. Every promise kept. Every task completed. Every challenge faced. Every difficult step taken. These actions create proof. Proof that you are capable. Proof that you can be trusted. Proof that you follow through. The brain notices. Identity begins changing. The person who once saw themselves as hesitant begins seeing themselves as reliable. The power of imperfect action. Perfection is one of the greatest enemies of progress. Many people would rather delay than produce something imperfect. The writer delays publishing. The creator delays posting. The entrepreneur delays launching. The perfectionist delays living. Meanwhile, action takers improve through repetition. Their early work may be flawed. Their first attempts may be weak. But they learn. Adjust. Grow. Improvement requires participation. Perfectionism avoids participation. Only one path leads forward. Create an action identity. Most people focus on goals. A more powerful focus is identity. Instead of saying, I want to write a book, think, I am a writer. Instead of, I want to get fit, think, I am someone who trains consistently. Instead of, I want confidence, think, I am someone who takes action despite uncertainty. Identity influences behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. The cycle becomes self-sustaining. The 5-second window. Many opportunities are lost in the first few seconds. An idea appears. A decision appears. An opportunity appears. Then hesitation begins. The mind starts generating reasons not to act. Excuses. Concerns. Delays. Doubts. One effective strategy is simple. Act before overthinking takes control. Take the first step immediately. Send the message. Open the document. Make the call. Begin the task. Movement interrupts hesitation. Learn to trust yourself. At the core of readiness lies a deeper issue. Trust. Many people do not trust themselves. They fear making mistakes. Fear choosing incorrectly. Fear looking foolish. Fear failing publicly. But self-trust develops exactly like confidence. Through evidence. Each time you act despite uncertainty, self-trust grows. Each time you recover from difficulty, self-trust grows. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, self-trust grows. Eventually, you stop needing guarantees. Because you trust your ability to adapt. Action creates clarity. People often wait because they want clarity first. But clarity is usually a result of movement. The entrepreneur discovers the right direction by building. The writer discovers the right message by writing. The creator discovers the right audience by creating. The leader discovers the right strategy by leading. Action reveals information that thinking cannot. This is why movement is so valuable. It teaches. The discipline advantage. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is dependable. People who rely entirely on motivation often struggle. People who build discipline continue moving even when emotions fluctuate. Discipline is not harshness. It is consistency. The ability to honor commitments regardless of mood. This ability creates extraordinary advantages over time. Because life rewards reliability. The new question most people ask, am I ready? This question often leads nowhere. A better question is, What is the smallest action I can take right now? That question creates movement. And movement changes everything. One question produces analysis. The other produces progress. Choose carefully. The secret hidden in action. There is a secret that only action reveals. You are far more capable than you think. Most limitations exist in imagination long before they exist in reality. The moment action begins, those limitations start collapsing. The person discovers strengths they never knew existed. Resilience they never knew existed. Creativity they never knew existed. Potential they never knew existed. But none of it appears while waiting. It appears while moving. The threshold. Every meaningful transformation contains a threshold. A point where thinking must end and action must begin. Some people spend their lives standing at that threshold, watching, planning, waiting. Others step through it, not because they are fearless, because they understand something important. Action is the only bridge between the life you have and the life you want. The next level. Learning to move before you're ready is powerful. But there is another level. A level where action becomes easier. Where fear loses influence. Where opportunities become more visible. Where growth accelerates. That level is courage, not the dramatic courage seen in movies. The everyday courage that quietly transforms lives. And once courage becomes a habit, everything changes. Chapter 8. The Courage Advantage. Most people admire courage. They see courageous individuals and assume they possess something rare, something special, something they were born with, a natural fearlessness, an unusual level of confidence, a personality trait unavailable to ordinary people. But this assumption is wrong. Courage is not a gift. It is not a personality type. It is not a genetic lottery. Courage is a skill. And like every skill, it grows through practice. The reason courageous people appear different is not because they experience less fear. It is because they have developed a different relationship with fear. They no longer treat fear as a command. They treat it as information. And that distinction changes everything. The great misunderstanding. When people imagine courage, they often picture dramatic moments. A soldier entering battle. A firefighter running into danger. A person risking everything for a cause. Those moments certainly require courage. But most courage is much quieter, much less visible, and much more common. The courage to start, the courage to speak, the courage to ask, the courage to create, the courage to fail publicly, the courage to leave an unfulfilling situation, the courage to pursue an uncertain future. These moments happen every day. And they shape lives far more than most people realize. Fear is not the enemy. Most people spend years trying to eliminate fear. But fear is not the enemy. Fear is a natural human response. The enemy is surrendering to fear. Think about it. Fear warns you before every meaningful challenge. Before the presentation. Before the interview. Before the difficult conversation. Before the opportunity. Before the risk. If fear disappeared completely, caution would disappear too. The goal is not removing fear. The goal is preventing fear from becoming your decision maker. Why courage compounds? One courageous action rarely changes a life. But repeated courageous actions often do. This is because courage compounds. The first difficult conversation builds confidence. The next becomes easier. The first public post builds resilience. The next feels less intimidating. The first major risk expands your comfort zone. The next seems more manageable. Each act of courage increases capacity. Over time, the person becomes capable of things that once seemed impossible. Not because fear disappeared. Because courage expanded. The confidence loop. Earlier in this book, we explored the relationship between action and confidence. Courage operates in a similar way. Action creates courage. Courage creates action. The cycle strengthens itself. Many people wait for courage before acting. But courage is built through action. The first step always feels hardest. The second step feels easier. The third step feels normal. This is why movement matters. Movement teaches the brain. Waiting teaches fear. Courage changes identity. Every action sends a message to the brain. When you avoid something, the message is, "This is dangerous." When you face it, the message is, "I can handle this." Over time, these messages accumulate. Identity begins changing. The person who once believed, "I'm not brave," starts thinking, "Maybe I can do difficult things." Then, "I've handled challenges before, and eventually, I am someone who acts despite fear." That identity is powerful. Because behavior naturally follows identity. The courage gap. There is often a gap between what people want and what they experience. The gap is rarely caused by intelligence. Rarely caused by talent. Rarely caused by knowledge. More often, it is a courage gap. The person knows what they should do. They simply hesitate to do it. They know they should make the call. Start the project. Apply for the opportunity. Speak honestly. Take the chance. The challenge is not understanding. The challenge is acting. This is where courage creates an advantage. Why courage creates opportunity. Most opportunities hide behind discomfort. Networking requires social courage. Leadership requires responsibility. Entrepreneurship requires uncertainty. Creativity requires vulnerability. Growth requires risk. Because most people avoid discomfort, many opportunities remain surprisingly accessible. Not because they are easy. Because they are uncomfortable. The willingness to move toward discomfort often opens doors that remain closed to others. The everyday practice of courage. Courage is strengthened through repetition. Just like a muscle. This means small acts matter. Speaking up when you normally stay silent. Trying something new. Asking questions. Expressing ideas. Taking initiative. Accepting challenges. These moments may appear insignificant, but they are training sessions. Every act of courage strengthens the next one. Every challenge faced expands your capacity. Growth becomes cumulative. Courage and rejection. One of the biggest obstacles to action is fear of rejection. People fear hearing no, being ignored, being criticized, being judged. Yet rejection is often misunderstood. Rejection is not proof of inadequacy. It is evidence of participation. The person who never gets rejected is usually avoiding meaningful opportunities. Every creator experiences rejection. Every entrepreneur experiences rejection. Every leader experiences rejection. Every successful person experiences rejection. The difference is interpretation. Courageous individuals do not treat rejection as a verdict. They treat it as feedback. The hidden reward. Most people focus on the external rewards of courage. Money, success, recognition, achievement. These rewards matter. But there is a deeper reward. Self-respect. Every time you act courageously, you strengthen your relationship with yourself. You prove that your values matter more than your fears. You demonstrate integrity, consistency, commitment. The result is self-trust. And self-trust is one of the most valuable assets a person can possess. Why most people stay stuck? Remaining stuck often feels safer. The risks appear smaller. The uncertainty appears lower. The discomfort appears manageable. But stagnation carries hidden costs. Lost opportunities. Lost growth. Lost experiences. Lost potential. The person avoids immediate discomfort but creates long-term regret. Courage reverses this equation. It accepts temporary discomfort in exchange for future possibility. Courage is a decision. Many people wait for courageous feelings. They rarely arrive. Courage is usually a decision. A choice. A commitment. The decision to move despite uncertainty. The decision to speak despite nervousness. The decision to continue despite difficulty. The decision comes first. The feeling often follows. This is why courage is available to everyone. It does not require special talent. Only willingness. The courage advantage in life. If two people possess similar intelligence, similar resources, and similar opportunities, the more courageous individual often progresses further. Not because they know more. Because they attempt more. They take more chances, learn more lessons, build more relationships, create more opportunities. Their lives expand because their actions expand. The advantage compounds over years. And eventually becomes dramatic. The person you become. Every courageous action changes more than circumstances. It changes identity. The person becomes stronger, more resilient, more adaptable, more capable. The external result matters, but the internal transformation matters even more. Because once courage becomes part of who you are, every future challenge becomes easier to face. The ultimate realization. The goal is not becoming fearless. Fearlessness is unnecessary. The goal is becoming courageous enough to move anyway. To act despite uncertainty. To continue despite doubt. To pursue what matters despite discomfort. That ability creates extraordinary lives. Not because courage removes obstacles. Because courage prevents obstacles from becoming permanent. The next transformation. Courage creates action. Action creates growth. Growth creates confidence. But for transformation to last, something deeper must change. Identity. Because temporary action creates temporary results. Lasting change requires becoming a different kind of person. A person who no longer waits. No longer hesitates endlessly. No longer depends on motivation. A person whose identity is built around action itself. And that is where our journey goes next. Chapter 9. Building an action identity. Most people focus on changing their results. They want more success, more confidence, more discipline, more achievement, more happiness, more freedom. There is nothing wrong with these desires. But there is a problem. Results are usually the consequence of identity. And many people try to change the consequence without changing the cause. They focus on what they want, instead of who they need to become. This is why many changes fail. The person attempts new behaviors while maintaining an old identity. Eventually, the old identity wins. Because identity is powerful, it shapes choices. It shapes habits. It shapes decisions. It shapes behavior. And behavior shapes life, the hidden force behind your actions. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you are acting according to a story. A story about who you are. Maybe you see yourself as disciplined. Maybe you see yourself as creative. Maybe you see yourself as shy. Maybe you see yourself as confident. Maybe you see yourself as unlucky. Maybe you see yourself as someone who struggles. These identities influence behavior. Not consciously. Automatically. The mind constantly seeks consistency. If you believe, I am not the type of person who takes risks, you will avoid risk. If you believe, I am not disciplined, you will struggle with consistency. If you believe, I never finish what I start, your actions will often confirm the belief. The identity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why goals are not enough? Goals are useful. They provide direction, focus, motivation. But goals alone are temporary. Once a goal is achieved, motivation often disappears. Identity is different. Identity remains. A person with the goal of running a marathon may train until the race is complete. A person who sees themselves as a runner continues running. The behavior survives because the identity survives. This is one of the most important distinctions in personal growth. Temporary goals create temporary effort. Strong identities create lasting behavior. The problem with motivation: many people spend years searching for motivation. They watch videos, read quotes, listen to speeches, wait for inspiration. Motivation feels powerful, but motivation is unreliable. Some days it appears. Other days it vanishes. If action depends entirely on motivation, consistency becomes impossible. Identity creates a stronger foundation. The person no longer asks, "Do I feel motivated?" They ask, "What would someone like me do?" The answer becomes obvious, and action follows. Becoming the kind of person who acts. The central idea of this book is simple: stop waiting to feel ready. But to make that principle permanent, it must become part of your identity. You must stop seeing yourself as someone who waits, and start seeing yourself as someone who acts. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but decisively. The shift is subtle, yet powerful. Instead of saying, "I hope I can be confident," you begin saying, "I am someone who takes action despite uncertainty." That identity changes everything. Identity is built through evidence. Many people misunderstand identity. They think it is created through positive thinking alone. It isn't. Identity is built through evidence. Every action becomes a vote. Every choice becomes proof. Every behavior reinforces a story. If you consistently write, you become a writer. If you consistently train, you become an athlete. If you consistently create, you become a creator. If you consistently act despite fear, you become courageous. Identity grows from repeated evidence, not wishful thinking. Small votes matter. One of the biggest mistakes people make is underestimating small actions. They believe only major achievements count. But identity does not work that way. Identity notices patterns. One workout may not change your body, but it strengthens the identity of someone who trains. One page may not complete a book, but it strengthens the identity of someone who writes. One courageous conversation may not transform your life, but it strengthens the identity of someone who speaks honestly. Small actions matter because they accumulate. The brain pays attention to consistency. The power of keeping promises to yourself. Every promise you keep strengthens self-trust. Every promise you break weakens it. This is why small commitments are so important. Many people make enormous promises, then fail to follow through. The result is frustration, disappointment, self-doubt. A better strategy is starting smaller. Make promises you can keep, then keep them repeatedly. The brain begins seeing you as reliable. Trust grows. Confidence grows. Identity changes. Stop labeling yourself incorrectly. People often describe themselves in damaging ways. I'm lazy. I'm inconsistent. I'm bad at finishing things. I'm not disciplined. These labels become traps, because behavior follows belief. Instead of treating weaknesses as identities, treat them as temporary patterns. Patterns can change. Identities feel permanent. A person who believes they are lazy often behaves lazily. A person who believes they are learning discipline behaves differently. The language matters. Because identity matters. The action-based identity. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a new identity. Not a fantasy identity. Not a perfect identity. An action-based identity. You see yourself as someone who moves forward. Someone who follows through. Someone who acts despite discomfort. Someone who honors commitments. Someone who learns through action. What would change? Your decisions would change. Your habits would change. Your standards would change. Your future would change. Because identity influences everything. The compound effect of identity. Most people focus on outcomes. Identity focuses on process. The outcome may take months, years, sometimes decades. Identity works every day. Every action reinforces it. The compounding effect becomes extraordinary. A person who consistently acts develops skills. Skills create opportunities. Opportunities create results. Results strengthen identity. Identity strengthens action. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. Success starts feeling natural, not because life became easier, because behavior became consistent. The new standard. When identity changes, standards change. The person no longer negotiates with every decision. They stop asking, "Should I do it?" and start asking, "When will I do it?" Action becomes expected, not optional. This reduces mental resistance. The behavior becomes normal, and normal behaviors are easier to sustain. Why identity outlasts emotion. Feelings fluctuate. Identity remains. You will have difficult days, low energy days, uncertain days, fearful days. Those days are inevitable. Identity carries you through them. Because identity is not dependent on mood. A writer writes. A leader leads. A creator creates. An action-oriented person acts. Even when emotions are imperfect. Especially when emotions are imperfect. The turning point. There is a moment in every transformation where behavior stops feeling forced. The action becomes part of who you are. Not something you occasionally do. Something you naturally do. This is the turning point. The point where growth becomes sustainable. Because identity is now supporting the behavior, instead of resisting it. The question that builds identity. Whenever you face uncertainty, ask, what would the person I want to become do right now? Not tomorrow. Not next month. Right now. The answer often reveals the next action. And the next action strengthens the identity. One decision at a time. One vote at a time. One action at a time. The life-changing truth. The most powerful realization in personal development may be this: you do not rise to the level of your goals. You tend to fall to the level of your identity. Your identity determines your habits. Your habits determine your actions. Your actions determine your future. Change the identity, and the future begins changing automatically. The final chapter. You now understand readiness, fear, confidence, timing, action, courage, identity. All of these pieces lead to one final question. What happens when a person truly stops waiting? When action becomes natural? When courage becomes normal? When identity aligns with growth? What kind of life becomes possible? That is the final step of our journey. And it changes everything. Chapter 10. The life that begins when you start. There is a version of your life that exists only in possibility. A version where you take the chance. Start the project. Have the conversation. Pursue the dream. Accept the challenge. Take the risk. A version where you stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for certainty. Stop waiting for confidence. Stop waiting to feel ready. Most people spend their lives standing at the edge of that possibility. Looking at it. Thinking about it. Imagining it. Talking about it, but never stepping into it. Not because they lack ability. Not because they lack intelligence. Not because they lack opportunity. Because they are waiting. Waiting for a feeling that never arrives. This book has been about breaking that pattern. And now we arrive at the most important truth of all. Life changes the moment you begin. People often imagine transformation as a dramatic event. A breakthrough. A sudden realization. A life-changing opportunity. Those moments exist. But most transformations begin quietly. A single decision. A small action. An imperfect start. Nothing appears remarkable, yet everything changes. Because movement has begun. And movement changes direction. Direction changes outcomes. Outcomes change lives. The difference between dreamers and builders: dreamers imagine possibilities. Builders create them. Both start with vision. Both start with desire. Both start with hope. The difference appears afterward. One waits. The other acts. One continues preparing. The other continues learning through experience. One remains attached to the idea. The other commits to the process. Years later, their lives look completely different. Not because one dreamed bigger. Because one moved. The freedom of action. Waiting creates a prison. A prison built from hesitation, doubt, fear, overthinking, perfectionism, excuses. Action breaks the bars. Not because action guarantees success. Because action creates freedom. The freedom to learn. The freedom to adapt. The freedom to improve. The freedom to discover. The freedom to become. A person in motion can change direction. A person standing still cannot. What happens when you stop waiting? The moment you stop waiting, several things begin happening. You gain information. You gain experience. You gain momentum. You gain confidence. You gain clarity. Not all at once, but gradually, consistently. The future becomes less mysterious because you are actively participating in its creation. Instead of watching life happen, you begin shaping it. The myth of the perfect path. Many people delay action because they want certainty about the entire journey. The problem is that life does not reveal the entire path. Only the next step. And often, that is enough. Think about driving at night. Your headlights may illuminate only a short distance ahead, yet you can travel hundreds of miles. Not because you see the whole road, because you see enough to continue. Life works similarly. You rarely need complete clarity. You need the courage for the next step. Every extraordinary life begins ordinarily. When people study successful individuals, they often focus on the destination. The success. The achievement. The recognition. The influence. They rarely focus on the beginning. The uncertainty. The mistakes. The awkward attempts. The failures. The doubts. Yet every extraordinary life begins with ordinary actions. Small decisions. Repeated consistently, over long periods. The beginning is rarely impressive. The persistence is. The real purpose of action. Many people believe action exists to produce results. Results matter. But action serves a deeper purpose. Action reveals identity. It shows you who you are becoming. Every courageous choice strengthens character. Every challenge faced develops resilience. Every commitment honored builds self-respect. The external achievement is valuable. The internal transformation is priceless. Because skills can be lost. Opportunities can disappear. Circumstances can change. But the person you become remains. The end of excuses. At some point, every person must choose. Continue explaining. Or begin acting. Continue waiting. Or begin moving. Continue hoping. Or begin building. Excuses always feel convincing, especially when fear is involved. But excuses never create progress. Only action does. The future does not respond to intentions. It responds to behavior. The power of momentum. Momentum is one of life's greatest gifts. Once movement begins, everything becomes easier. Not easy. Easier. Confidence grows. Skills improve. Relationships expand. Opportunities appear. The person starts seeing evidence of progress. And evidence strengthens belief. Momentum turns effort into growth. Growth turns possibility into reality. But momentum has one requirement. A beginning. Why most regrets are preventable. Talk to people late in life and a pattern often appears. Their deepest regrets are not usually mistakes. They are missed opportunities. The risks not taken. The words not spoken. The dreams not pursued. The experiences avoided. The chances ignored. The tragedy is that many of these regrets were preventable. One decision could have changed everything. One action. One attempt. One beginning. The person you become. Imagine two versions of yourself. One continues waiting. One starts today. 5 years pass. 10 years pass. 20 years pass. The difference becomes enormous. Not because one person was luckier. Because one person accumulated experience, confidence, skills, relationships, knowledge, momentum. The other accumulated hesitation. The gap grows wider every year. This is the power of action. It compounds. The secret hidden in every success story. Behind every meaningful achievement lies the same hidden secret. Someone began before they felt ready. Someone acted before certainty existed. Someone moved before confidence appeared. Someone took the first step. Every successful entrepreneur, every respected author, every accomplished athlete, every influential creator, every effective leader, at some point, they faced uncertainty. And moved anyway. That is the secret, not talent. Not luck, not perfection, action. What this book has taught. You have learned that readiness is often an illusion. That confidence follows action. That fear disguises itself as logic. That perfect timing does not exist. That courage is a skill. That identity shapes behavior. That waiting carries hidden costs. And that movement creates possibility. These ideas are simple. But their implications are profound. Because once you understand them, excuses lose power. And action becomes harder to avoid. The question that matters most as this book comes to an end, only one question remains. Not, do you understand these ideas? You probably do. Not, do you agree with them? You probably do. The real question is, what will you do next? Because knowledge without action changes nothing. Understanding without execution changes nothing. Insight without movement changes nothing. Life responds to behavior, not intention. A letter to your future self. Imagine your future self speaking to you today. 5 years from now. 10 years from now. What would that person say? Perhaps something like this. Thank you for starting. Thank you for taking the risk. Thank you for not waiting forever. Thank you for enduring the uncertainty. Thank you for believing action was possible. Thank you for beginning before you felt ready. That future version of you depends on decisions being made now. Not someday. Now. The final lesson: you may never feel ready. You may never feel completely confident. You may never eliminate fear. You may never achieve perfect certainty. And none of those things are required. The people who build extraordinary lives are not the people who feel ready. They are the people who start anyway. They act while uncertain. Move while afraid. Learn while struggling. Grow while imperfect. And eventually, they discover something remarkable. Readiness was never the requirement. Action was. The beginning hidden inside the ending. This chapter may be the end of the book. But it should not be the end of the journey. In fact, it should be the beginning. The beginning of action. The beginning of courage. The beginning of momentum. The beginning of possibility. Because the life you want is not waiting on confidence. It is not waiting on certainty. It is not waiting on perfect timing. It is waiting on a decision. A decision only you can make. So stop waiting to feel ready. You never will. And that is perfectly okay. Because the people who change their lives do not wait for readiness. They create it. One action at a time. One step at a time. Starting now.